Hi there, I'm Andy Robertson and this is Family Gamer TV. Welcome to my gaming surgery. Now this is the moment in the show where I get to answer your questions. This week we've got a question: what is the difference between all the different versions of the Nintendo DS? So I know you guys have had a few, but what I'm going to do is sort of take you on a mystery tour. First one is this
look at that.
Original Game Boy back in the sort of early 90s. Cartridge in the back, just black and white, not backlit, so you can't play in the dark. Normal batteries, so just put your batteries in the back. So it means you can replace them, which you can do in later models. So you go, that's the original Game Boy.
Look at that.
Then the next one is the Game Boy Advance. Now this is very popular, so you might
We've still got one of those.
Yeah, and they're still really good. It's still really good games. This is the second edition, so the original one was wider. And didn't have a backlit screen. They released the Game Boy Advance SP. A decent Mario game on the Game Boy Advance will keep you just as entertained as the DS. So pick one up for maybe £10. So there you go.
Yeah, we got ours second hand.
Now, more unusual is the Game Boy Micro.
Never.
Tiny little one. But all this does is play the Game Boy Advance games. It's just a smaller form factor. And it was at the time when mobile phones games were taking off. They sort of modelled it on the sort of Nokia phones. You can see it's that sort of size. Plays all those games. The one thing it didn't do is that the Game Boy Advance was backward compatible with the original Game Boy games.
Yeah, that's why we got that one.
So you could play the retro games, whereas the Game Boy Micro, to make it smaller,
could only play.
You can't put Game Boy games in it. But apart from that,
quite cute.
Then we had a big step forward when they released the Nintendo DS, which was the first console that had a stylus. So obviously this is when, at the moment when you start controlling games with a pen. You've got a touch screen, has a microphone, and all those sort of features that we're now used to. Now this can still play Game Boy Advance games. It's this backward compatibility thing. But quite quickly after this, about a year later, this was replaced by the DS Lite, which is basically just a redesign of that original DS. Same features, exactly the same.
Just a bit smaller.
A little bit smaller, a little bit more sort of sleeker design. Again, you can still play the Game Boy Advance games, have your slot. The screens were much better, so much brighter screens, you could control the brightness. But apart from that, it was pretty much the same. So a couple of years after that, we move on to the DSi. I think this is the one you probably haven't had.
No,
because this isn't quite as sort of.
I think we've got like our version of the yellow one, but it's silver or something.
Yeah, so most of the DS Lite is either black, silver. The yellow one's a relatively unusual colour. So the DSi, so this is different to the DS. Firstly, you can't play Game Boy Advance games because it doesn't have that slot. Sort of essentially they've moved away from that. But you can use it to play download games. So there's some small games called DSiWare, which you can then download to the console. Just a few pounds. Some of them are free, and when you buy a DSi, you'll get a few tokens that you go into the store on the actual device, connect it to your Wi-Fi internet, and then you can download some games.
So is it just games you can get on the internet? Is that the only use of the internet on it?
I have some creative games. There's a game called Flickbook Studio, where you can do like a little animation, and because of the nature of your drawing on it, and you can flick through the pages, you can do this quite easy, simple way of doing animations, and it's created in partnership with Nintendo and Aardman Studios, the Wallace and Gromit people, and that comes free. It was like the sort of the title they sort of used to sell that DSiWare, and there's some really great DSiWare games. Yeah,
that sounds clever, doesn't it?
Yep. So that's the DSi. Then.
Where does it store those games? Sorry to be ignorant.
On a SD card. So there's some memory in that that will store the games, and you can plug in a SD card. So this is the DSi XL. As you can see, it's a bit bigger. The screens are a lot larger, but this is just DSi. Same features, so you can't play the GBA games, and it has that download DSiWare feature. But the benefit of these big screens is that if you're playing a game where more people want to view, that's something you're saying Mia does sometimes. The viewing angle is much wider, so that's why we quite like it.
Bigger,
the screens are bigger, and so if you've got 2 or 3 people playing, cooperate, say, "Oh, go there, go here." That's quite nice.
What's that bit in the middle?
That's a good point. This is a camera, so that's another difference between the DS Lite and the DSi or DSi XL, is that it's got a camera, and some games use that camera. I always take a picture of you to use in the game, or sometimes to track your movement, a little bit like Kinect, but before that.
That's clever, isn't it?
So that's the DSi XL. And we finally get to the 3DS. So now, we talked about this a bit.
Yes.
But then the common misconception here is that it's just a DS that's got a 3D screen.
That's why I want to always call it a 3D DS.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not actually a 3D DS, or that's not all it is, because actually this is a whole new generation of hardware. Like the jump from the Game Boy Advance to the DS or DS Lite was a completely new set of hardware. It's the same again.
Right.
The issue is it's packaged in a similar way.
Very similar. I mean, there's a few differences, isn't there, like that baby?
Yeah. Yep. So you've got the circle pad that you mentioned. You can control much easier, a more sort of fine direction. This still has download games on it, so it supports the old DSiWare games that are on the DSi, but it also has its own games. So it has 3D specific games that have been designed for the 3DS that you can download.
Oh, right, download 3D games.
Yes.
Ah.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been tailored for it. And again, it's sort of £4 or £5 territory, so it's not going to break the bank.
Pocket money style rather than Christmas or birthday.
Exactly. And then you can also have a virtual console. Have you heard of the virtual console?
Please,
We're getting a bit technical.
A virtual console.
Yeah, so it's a feature on the Wii and on the 3DS that allows you to play old Nintendo games or other consoles, like retro games, like the Zelda game you maybe used to play, but on your current console. You have to buy it again. It's quite cheap, and then you download it and you can play it.
Okay.
So, but this is quite a nice way of them saying, well, we're not supporting the old Game Boy Advance, and we're not supporting the old Game Boy games, but for a few pounds, your favourite ones, you can download and play them here.
Yeah, that's
and they do a bit of work to make them look a bit nicer on the screen and stuff like that.
What are those bits there?
Good point. So a big feature of the 3DS isn't just it's got a 3D screen, it's also got a 3D camera. So you can take 3D pictures as you would a normal camera, and then you can view them on the 3D screen, and they are in 3D.
No.
You can also take 3D video now with the latest update. So there's a lot of features here.
I don't get it. So you take a picture. Yeah. So I told this, take a picture of you.
Yep.
And then on there it would look 3D.
Yeah. That's because it's got two cameras. So it takes one picture with each camera.
Yeah.
And then combines them, uses it with its clever screen.
Yeah.
To then create an image out of those two perspectives.
So come on, there must be something not good about it.
I think one thing, which isn't as I'd like it, is the battery life. It depends what you're doing, but it's going to be in the region of about 3 hours play.
Right.
Now, if you're used to an old DS Lite, that's more sort of 8-9 hours. What they do to try and get around this, I think it's quite a nice idea. It comes with its little home, a little 3DS holster, which sits on the desk, and when you're not playing it, you just sit it in the holster, and that means it's constantly charging.
Can you play it plugged in?
Yeah, you can play it plugged in. Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter.
Exactly, that'll just last. So if you're at home, it's not an issue. Yeah,
but that's the best you can come up with as its minus points is its battery.
Yeah, probably. Yes. I mean, it's pretty good. I think it needs more games, but it's still early days. And we're seeing we've got this Super Mario 3D Land and there's Mario
Surely
Kart.
The fact that it's so expensive.
Well, that's the issue. It's not that expensive. In fact, it's about the same price as the DSi XL now.
Oh, is it?
Which again makes people think it's just the same console, but actually you're getting an awful lot more horsepower, a lot more technology, and that's because Nintendo, we really want to see this be a success, and I think I think it will be. It's just it takes its time to get going. So there you go.
Great.
That's your mystery tour.
My
through
goodness.
The world of Game Boys and Nintendo DSs.
Yeah, man.
So there you go. I've looked at not only the differences between the different DSs, but also the original Game Boys and where they came from. But hopefully, by looking at that, you've got a better idea of what features and which functions are in which console, and more importantly then, which of those will be best suited for your family. I'll be back next week with more gaming surgery questions.